Hey, FlimsyLunchTray here, and welcome to World of Warships. As today we'll be covering the Tier 10 Italian experimental battle cruiser, heavy cruiser, the Varese, and it is a pretty filthy, disgusting ship, as featured in the highlight video that I had up on Saturday. Today we have the upgrade committer build going over the ship. So with that being said, let's get right into it. So what is the Varese in terms of the kind of ship and how she performs? So she's really a mid-range to close range. She's a brawling cruiser. These aren't the main battery guns you're seeing on the front. Those are secondary battery guns. And those secondary battery guns, you have 152s, and then you have 90s, and then the main battery is actually here in the midsection of the ship, where she gets 8 320mm main battery guns. They have really poor firing angles. You have to open up a lot of broadside to use them. So they're more of an afterthought, where you're focusing more on utilizing your secondaries, which, depending on the amount of hit points you have, you can get them up to a max of over 15 kilometers due to the fight or flight status, if you will. But she's a pretty tanky cruiser. You have a heavy repair team. She has an insanely large hit pool for a cruiser, 81,600, and that's without the Charlie Kilo combat signal, which boosts her hit points up over 85,000 hit points for a tier 10 cruiser, which is just maddening. That you can have a tier 10 cruiser now in World of Warships where you can take over 200,000 damage and still be alive. Let's talk more about the armor layout now. Well, she has a pretty big 27mm bow and stern plating, so both pretty large in terms of that. But then you get to this 40mm casemate armor on the deck, and then 40mm on the upper armor belt, which drops to 100mm, which drops to a 200mm, and then your torpedo protection 30mm beneath. So you can effectively bounce even battleship caliber shells if you angle your armor correctly. Now the weakness, in addition to, I talked about the semi-armor piercing from cruisers and battleships, particularly on the Varese, but also the overmatch of the bow. You have a 27mm bow, so larger battleship caliber shells will overmatch this easily. I don't remember off the top of my head. I'd have to do the math. So maybe I'll put it up on the side of the screen here. But you can be overmatched. Like, for example, I was pushing in on a Oregon with 457, and he was over matching my bow, and so I was eating a lot of damage despite pushing in. Couldn't get my torps off because of that. So no, that is a weakness to the ship, but especially SAP. The 40mm deck plating makes you more resilient to high explosive spam from a lot of the destroyers and light cruisers in the game. Of course, there's going to be certain ships, once they pass that threshold of the 40mm, then you'll be eating more damage. And you have a very small superstructure as a whole. The interesting thing, as I talked about in the video, is the ship has a pretty small profile overall, but you can catch battleship fire at range or penetrate into your deck. If we take away some of this plating, we get down to the citadel. You can see it's an above waterline citadel. So you will be citadel. You can go broadside. There's also a clip I think I showed, Stalingrad citadeling me, even though I was a little bit angled. But certain cruisers, battle cruisers, and battleships, or particularly cruisers and battle cruisers, can have improved penetration angles. So you want to be angled as much as possible, not give in to the temptation to go flat broadside always to get your guns off, because they each have a slightly different firing angle. Maybe I can have that also here on the screen for you to see as well. So try your best not to fall for that. Your gun mount armor, you have 250 on the front, 125 to 100, and 125 on the back, with 110 on top, with the barbette being 250, and then the gun mount armor bottom plate 105. So you will be like sailing along, like your turrets would be, maybe you're shooting at some ship over here and some battleship is shooting at you. Your main battery guns will be incapacitated regularly when playing the Varese, but it's really about the secondaries. That's where the main highlight is, and they don't actually even put those in on the armor scheme because they're pretty tanky secondary turrets, all said and done. Looking at the modules, so with the build we have right now, We've gone more for a secondary battery build, so we haven't taken like main battery mod 3 in the 6 slot. We have 25-second reload time on these 8 320s. With Sansonetti, with his enhanced skill in the gun feeder, we have a 10-second minimum shell type switching time, which you are utilizing between the semi-armor piercing and the armor piercing. You don't get high explosive here on this boat. 180 turn time of 20.9 seconds. I think we also have greased the gears, if I'm not mistaken. Maximum AP shell damage, or SAP shell damage, is 8,950. Maximum AP shell damage is 8,300. So the SAP's pretty brutal against cruisers and battleships and aircraft carriers. As well as, you know, you get some destroyers, you should try to launch SAP. And then armor piercing, you should definitely utilize if you get some broadside targets. With the hit points, so 81,600, and that's with Survivability Expert on Sansonetti. If we take Charlie Kilo plus 5%, we jump up to 85,700 hit points. So it's a very tanky cruiser. It's a lot of hit points you can spend, but you also want to be mindful in how you spend those hit points ultimately when we talk about the heavy repair teams, which I will talk about here shortly. Your torpedoes, you get, what was the torpedo layout? Was it 3? Yeah, so you get 6 torpedoes as a whole. They go 8 kilometers. They do 23,498 damage because we're taking Pack-a-Punch to extend our secondary battery effectiveness, which also buffs the torpedo damage. 72 knot speed, so relatively fast, with detectability range of 1.7. But they do have a really long reload time of 120 seconds. I think you can trim it down to 108 if you take the fill the tube skill. But I've put my points on my commander elsewhere. And I've only used the torps like once or twice effectively. Your main battery range is 18.4. So with these 320s, that's like okay-ish range maybe for tier 10, but sometimes you will be lacking. So then something like having one of the talents that Sansonetti has, if you get a kill, extends out your main battery gun range. Propulsion, 200,000 hit points, or sorry, 200,000 horsepower, excuse me. Maximum speed, 33 knots. If we take the Sierra Mike plus 5%, we can get up to 34.7 knots. And then talking about the experimental ship futures, this is the fight or flight. So your ship's characteristics gradually improve as you lose hit points down to the minimum HP threshold. As you restore the HP, these modifiers become less effective. Your ship may begin battle with a reduced amount of HP. Now, these ships don't. The other 3 experimental ships did. The Mets, Oregon, and the Borodino version, I'm spacing it right now. Those have start off with limited hit points. The 3 newer ones do not. I'm spacing their name. We can just look at the tech tree and I can just reference that if you're a little confused when you see that experimental ship status. It's Mets, Vyazma, Oregon, and then can I see the other ships? Second section, the Protector, the Hataka, and the Varese. And then it was Vyazma. That's the one I was thinking about originally. So what you see here when we take ship modifiers, like it changes depending on what you're running on the ship. So for us, a minimum HP threshold of the maximum capacity of what we can dish out is 21,425. In terms of the secondary battery firing range, maxing it out, and your secondary battery reload time, maxing it out. And then when your HP, when you start the battle, it's the full hit points, so you start off full health. So you can see the secondary battery firing range goes up by plus 20%, and your secondary battery reload time drops by negative 40%. So that is massive when you start talking about building into secondaries on this ship with Commander. So it's really, you're playing this boat for secondaries, and the main batteries are an after secondary thought as well as the torpedoes. So let's talk about the modules, or upgrades, excuse me. So we've taken the Auxiliary Armaments Mod 1. This is improving our secondary battery survivability by plus 100%, as well as our AA mount survivability by plus 100%. The AA is not super strong on this boat, but it is stronger because one of the 4-point skills I've taken. It's a limited range as well on your AA. It's only 4.6. So that doesn't really do a whole lot in terms of trying to help prevent a first strike or a second strike. Even against tier 8 CVs, like I went up against Yorktown and I was having issues with this car. So just be mindful of that. But you're building into your survivability of your secondaries to be more effective with those 152s and those 90s, because your 152s penetrate 42 millimeter, your 90 penetrates 26. So even those destroyers that have 25 millimeter side plating, you'll still fully pin them. So you can see 3.5 second reload time, and here an 8-second reload time. So you can get some spicy damage from your secondaries as a whole. So we've invested in the secondaries. You really wouldn't consider your main armaments mod 1 here, in my opinion. There may be those of you who have the Michelangelo. That was a dockyard ship. I didn't manage to pick it up, but it's a copy and paste of Michelangelo in terms of her similar secondary layout and the main battery layout. In the second slot, we've taken the Hydroacoustic Search Mod 1. This is increasing the consumable action time by plus 20%. This is a special upgrade that costs 17,000 coal, or you can get up to 25% off coupon for 12,750 coal. I run that because, you know, there's so much torpedoes in the game between submarines and then destroyers, and you're going to be more aggressively pushing a lot. So we effectively have pushed out our action time on our Hydro to 120 seconds. But then we can take a combat signal to bump that up to 132 second action time with the Hydro. If you don't have the resources, then you're probably looking at something like Engine Protection or Damage Control System Mod 1, because you get full duration, I think similar to battleships in terms of the fires and floods. I know that for the fires, it's like similar to like Stalingrad and Moscow, I believe. So you will be taking longer duration fires. But for us here, it's the Hydroacoustic Search Mod 1 makes the most sense if you have the coal to invest in that. The second slot, we've taken the Secondary Battery Mod 1. This is improving our secondary battery range by plus 20% and reducing the shell dispersion by 20%. So right now, without taking the secondary combat signal, you can see 12 kilometer maximum range. And we take this, which improves our firing range by plus 5%, improves reload time, and reduces also the secondary shell dispersion. So now we're jumping up to 12.5 before we start adding in the fighter flight, where your secondaries are begin to bloom up like over 15 kilometers, like 15.1. Which is kind of crazy when you compare it to something like the Hanover, which, you know, you have to use a funny button consumable to extend your secondary range out, or like the Pan American battleships. So very strong secondary boats. You do want to be running that secondary combat signal with your secondary battery mod 1 here. Otherwise, there's really no point in taking any of these other skills. Like, this is solely focused on secondaries. That's where you get most of your damage from in playing this boat effectively. So that's the tried and true upgrade to take here. The fourth slot, there can be some discussion here. Like, there's actually these three are all possibly good options. I take Propulsion Mod 1. It's quite typical. I take this on all my cruisers usually in the game. There's some variants, but this is just reducing your time to reach full engine speed when accelerating by negative 50%. So it helps you avoid maybe some torpedoes. I've also used it in a way of juking some salvos. The other option here could be Steering Gears Mod 1 and reducing your rudder shift time by negative 20%. And one of the reasons why this is a little bit more relevant for this cruiser is because of your main battery being here in the midsection of the ship. So you have to really swing the ship out to get it, like, let's say you're pushing a battleship, and then you swing out to get your main battery off and you swing back in. When you don't have that rudder shift mod, what you open yourself up to when, let's say if you don't time right, let's say a battleship shoots at you, you wait 5 or 10 seconds, then you decide to do this maneuver, and then his guns are reloaded and he gets a citadel on you, right? So you have to time it really well when you swing your ship if you really want to get your main battery off, and be aware of what type of reload time are you dealing with on the enemy battleship you're going up against. You know, if there's something like a battleship that has a main battery reload booster or has a burst fire gimmick, you do have to be mindful of that. So effectively what the Steering Gears mod does is it shortens the time where you can swing your main battery guns out and then swing back in to block the shots. So it's really close. You can do it without the Steering Gears mod 1. In my experience, I went up against like something that, like a battleship that ran up 21 second reload time. So you can swing it, but barely. So there might be some commanders who want to take String Gears Mod 1. You can try both of these out. At the same time, you see the games recommending your fire extinguishing time, taking the damage control system mod 2, which reduces, improves the extinguishing time of fires and improves the time of floods being reduced because you have those full duration fires and whatnot. It would shorten it by 15% to help make you more of a tanky cruiser. This is something usually you see more on battleships, battle cruisers of a different kind of nature. So I think these two would be best as a whole to run here. You do get this massive heal. And one of the things I do to help make up for not taking the damage control system mod 2 is actually run India Yankee on this cruiser, which reduces the fire extinguishing time by 20%. Slot 5, you have Concealment System mod 1. This brings our concealment down to 12.2. Now, I don't take concealment on my Italian commander on Sansonetti. I leave that unchecked because your secondary battery range, as we've already talked about, is 12.5, excuse me. So you can catch people off guard. All of a sudden your secondary start opening up, and then your secondary range will match whatever your concealment is if the secondaries are firing. So if I'm 12.2 and there's a ship that I can see 12.5 away from me, my secondaries will start opening up. My ship becomes visible by the enemy team. And most of the time you're trying to fight somewhat close to the enemy team, right? So that's why we don't take concealment on the commander, but we still take it here because it's warranted. And also the times you're going to need to disengage, go dark, and heal, you might have to manually turn your secondaries off because they're still going to be firing over 13, 14, 15 kilometers away, and you're waiting on this really long cooldown time on your heavy repair team. So I still find Concealment System Mod 1 very helpful. Now, on the flip side of that, what you could do, let's say you could drop the Concealment System Mod 1, which will push you over closer to 14 kilometer detect, and take Steering Gears Mod Modification 2. And this reduces your rudder shift time by negative 40% and steering gears repair time negative 80%. So then this rudder shift will start to mimic something much more, actually even better than that of the Libertad, which that's a really filthy battleship because it has a built-in propulsion and the rudder shift is just insanely good. So you control a lot of ships in angling your armor in time. So if you don't want to have that concealment option, the Steering Gears Mod 2 is actually quite relevant here. It just depends on how well you're able to manage your hit points over the length of an engagement. 6th slot, we've taken Auxiliary Armaments Mod 2. This is reducing the secondary battery reload time by negative 20%. It's also buffing our AA damage by plus 15% and damage from shell explosions. And then if we had defensive A fire, we'd get 2 additional flak explosions, but we don't have that here on this boat. So we're basically getting the most use out of having faster reloading secondaries, which is where a lot of the damage comes from and when you're playing the Varese. But we're also helping get our AA up to a more nice number, which is 86. You can see that continuous damage is 510. Most of that damage is wrapped up in the mid-range AA. Medium range AA, you see 237 and 151 short range. And then the damage by shell explosions is 90% probability of hit. And you can shred planes if they land in your flak. And I'll talk about the 4-point AA skill we're also running and why we're doing that. Alternatively, it could be main battery mod 3, but really you're going to want to take secondaries. That's what this ship's made to be, and it's really fun. Focusing on the secondaries rather than the main battery when you have to constantly swing your ship out to get those main battery guns off. Now, in terms of armaments, you have these 320mm guns. So, as I stated earlier, you have a 25-second reload time, minimum shell type switching time with the gun feeder, 10 seconds with Sansonetti. It's an enhanced skill. 8,950 maximum damage. Armor penetration, we pin 82, so you pin most ships in the game, except maybe you get a really tanky flight deck or something on a carrier, I don't know. Initial velocity, 830 meters a second, 18.4 kilometer range. Armor piercing, 8,300 maximum damage, and it still retains the same shell velocity. Torpedoes, they're 8 kilometer range. They are reload time 120 seconds, but of course if you had an rush ticking in, then that will help reduce it. Or if you're taking fill the tube skill, it will shorten it. Your maximum damage with the fill the tube or Pack-a-Punch commander skill is 23,498, 72 knot speed, 1.7 kilometer detectability by range. Now, in terms of the depth charge airstrike, you do get 2 available flights. There's only 1 attacking aircraft per flight, and it drops 2 bombs in the payload, which does a maximum bomb damage of 5,635 with an 8 kilometer range and a 30-second reload time. So helpful because you're going to be pushing in a lot, tied with your hydroacoustic search. Makes it for a nice pair versus a ship-based ASW. Consumable-wise with the damage control party, it's standard. It's a 5-second action time, 60-second cooldown time. You have an unlimited number of charges. This is where things switch really differently with this ship. So similar to the Sevastopol, you have the heavy repair teams. HP per second, 857. If you take the India Delta, we can bump that up to 1028. And has a long consumable action time of 45 seconds and a cooldown time of 120 seconds. And you get 3 of these standard. So the massive heals, massive potential to tank and eat a lot of damage. Like I've already had a game I showed on the clip. I took over 6 million, 6.1 million potential damage, which is insane. And I've had games I've taken up to 200,000 damage. So you're basically a punching bag, and you could take a lot of focus fire off your team if you utilize that as well, which maybe helps your team get the win or win a flank, take a capture point, etc., etc. Hydroacoustic search, detection of torpedoes 3.5, detection of ships 5 kilometer, submarine spotting, range at maximum depth 2 kilometers. With the combat signal down here, the Sierra Bravo, we have a 132-second consumable action time paired with our special upgrade here on the hydroacoustic search mod 1. And then a cooldown time of 120 seconds, and we get 3 of these hydros. Now we can switch out to defensive AA fire, but I don't recommend it. You're going to be wanting to run hydro because you're going to be pushing a lot with this ship. Otherwise, in terms of other combat signals, I like to run the November Foxtrot to drop from a 60 second to 57 second, from a 120 second to 114 second, and 120 second again to 114 second on the cooldown times. Then I run Hotel Yankee, damage caused by ramming an enemy, plus 50%, damage received in ramming an enemy, negative 20%, meaning it's possible to get a Die Hard achievement, assuming the other person isn't also running a Hotel Yankee combat signal. So before I talk about the skills itself, you can see it's a bit of an odd build. It doesn't really match with any of the other Italian ships in my mind in the game. Whether you're talking about Venezia or Napoli, this ship's a bit of a different wild card going on here, and I was experimenting a little bit with the build, and this is what I ended up landing on ultimately. But with the commander, if you're wondering how to get the Luigi Sansonetti, he comes from a collection in the game. So if I go to my profile and then go to collections, we'll have to see if I find it. I sort of remember what it looks like, but it's hard to remember. There's a lot of collections in the game. I'm wondering if I skipped it. I think I skipped it. I wonder if that was... I really want to show you guys this so you can able to see. Naval Aviation, Royal Navy Destroyers, Sherman Destroyers. Was it the Italian one? Legion of Honor? No. 6 game. Italian Destroyers. No, you just get an Italian Destroyer. Not Battle of North Cape. Well, it probably wouldn't hurt if I actually checked this out before I forgot. Yeah, I don't know what happened with that. So let me go to the armory instead. I'll show you the containers. So there's these containers for coal. 6,000 coal a pop. The Resolute and Rapid. So it's, yeah, the Resolute and Rapid collection dedicated to the commander Luigi Sansonetti. So you have to buy these containers for 6,000 coal. So it's quite a price tag. I don't remember if they actually also sell them via doubloons. If you're wondering, looks like it's only for coal. So yeah, that's where these are sitting at if you want to be able to expand your collection effectively in the game. and pick up Luigi Sansonetti. And he's kind of this commander where he's really needed for most all the Italian ships, even the tech tree ships, for many reasons. And so let's get into that. Why is that? Well, the talents, he has the rapid fire talent, which activates upon earning the Confederate achievement. You get a negative 15% reduction on your main battery reload time. You get the far reach talent, which activates once per battle upon destroying an enemy ship. So plus 8%, so that helps you get that 18.4 out to, I think it's closer to 20.1 when you activate this skill. So getting a kill is very helpful. Then you get Concealed Reserves, activates once per battle upon hitting any ships 100 times with the main battery shells. So plus 10% action time on your damage control party, repair party, and consumable, or your hydroacoustic search, which is harder to do when you only have 8 guns that reload, have a longer reload time, and you have to show a lot of broadside to get those firing. But is possible, and that's why he does really well, like on Venezia as an example. So his enhanced skills on cruisers is a swift fish skill, so it's a faster torpedo travel time by plus 7% rather than plus 5%. And his gun feeder talent is a negative 60% rather than the normal negative 40%. But they try to help out the Italian ships because they had this longer reload time, cell switching time as a whole. So gun feeder I find quite helpful because there are times I'm switching between high explosive or armor piercing and the semi armor piercing depending on the target. And if I get a broadside Moskva, or Stalingrad, I want to shoot my armor piercing rather than my sap. You saw some examples of me doing that in the Friday or the highlight video, which I'll have tagged at the end here. But we're closing in on 30 minutes. So let me just quickly break this down. So we're taking Grease the Gears to help have that 20.9 second, 180 degree turn time. We have Gun Feeder for reasons I just explained. Here there's some difference. Like you could take priority target like I do. I like to know how many ships are focusing me. Also helps me know if there's someone shooting at me from across the map. Like let's say if I'm pushing a flank and someone mid-map is trying to get a broadside salvo in on me. Also helps me when destroyers are switching between their main battery guns to torpedoes, because it goes like, for example, detected 1 to just detected 1, detected. Probably means he's firing torpedoes at you. Let's say if your hydroacoustic search is down, and it helps you to be a little bit more maneuverable. Otherwise, you could swap that out for field of tubes, so you have a faster torpedo reload time, which I believe is around 108 seconds when you take 10% off. Yeah, that'd be right. So there's 2 options there. Then you can see I've taken Adrenaline Rush, so it's just faster reloading time on the main battery, torpedo tube, airstrike, and secondary battery reload time with a slight buff to the continuous AA damage. Then I'd say do Survivability Expert, plus 450 hit points. One of your strongest things about this ship is it's a tier 10 cruiser with 85,700 hit points when you take Survivability Expert. So it's a must. Then you also see we have Pack a Punch. This is improving our torpedo damage by plus 15%, which is why you're seeing that hefty 23,498. And a plus 20% on the secondary battery firing range. So, this is quite typical, Venus Napoli, Michelangelo, or the German cruisers as well. So really useful, very needed here for the Varese. And then the last, let's say 8 points you'd have remaining, we take Top Grade Gunner. This is the permanent effect of a negative 10% on the secondary battery reload time. And yeah, this is a secondary boat. But we also have the Can Be Activated, where once an enemy ship's within your ship's standard detectability range, which for us is 12.2, we get a negative 8% on the main battery reload time. So we drop down more like 23 seconds, something like that. So that's kind of one of the reasons why some commanders might give up the Consumables System Mod 1 and go for Steering Gears Mod 2 to boost their range and getting that Can Be Activated effect on your main battery. But I have favored leaning the way I have the build right now. At least for me, you can of course always try it out. That's one of the things that's fun when you can redistribute the skills, but it's going to cost you a pretty penny. And then we've done the AA Defense and ASW Experts. This is improving the airstrike depth charge damage. So if you're wondering why you're seeing 5,635, it's because of this AA skill with the depth charge, airstrike depth charge damage. And then the continuous AA damage by plus 25%, and then damage from AA shell explosions plus 25%. But one of the big reasons why we'd like to take this skill, it's the ship consumable preparation reload time by negative 50%. So whenever your AA guns are active, if it's Dutch airstrikes, it's spotter planes, it's fighter planes, it's hybrid planes, it's CVs, right? This will reduce your cooldown time by negative 50%. And when you have a heal, let's say you're pushing a flank and you have a heal that takes 114 seconds before it comes off cooldown time, there's going to be situations where you're going to really want the heal. Like this example in my highlight video, I was pushing in, I was really needing the heal. I cut it really close with a Hanover focusing me, a Halford shooting me, and the Halford got an airstrike off on me with his hybrid DD planes. And he got really close to dying before I got this heal off of cooldown time. So that's an example. If I would have had this skill, I hadn't settled on the last 4 points, you know, I would have had more breathing room and it would have been so sweaty and me almost dying. So that's kind of where you're at. Alternatively, if you live long enough in battles, like let's say you typically live to the last 5 minutes of a match, as an example, over like a 15-minute battle, you could take Superintendent. It'd give you the 4th hydroacoustic search, but it gives you a 4th heavy repair team. I've had a couple games where I could have gotten a 4th heal off, but it's not been that big of a deal for me to not go with Superintendent. Because I kind of favor getting my heal off cooldown faster, because let's face it, there's always planes in the game, whether we're talking about spotter planes, fighter planes, catapult fighters, depth charge airstrikes that people drop on you, a Trump, you know, dropping airstrike on you, or a Dutch cruiser. There's just plenty of opportunities for your AA to be active, essentially, even if there's not an actual carrier in the game. Also keeping in mind, you know, hybrid ships. So that's why I've leaned that way. But alternatively, let's say you took Superintendent, you went with that instead of this, then you have 1 point remaining, you know, and you could like drop priority target, fill the tubes, and then take incoming fire alert as an alternative instead. Or you could have faster torpedoes as well, because it's pretty hard already to avoid 72 knot torpedoes, and then buff that a little bit more. Otherwise, this 4-point skill, I've considered swapping that out for the outnumbered skill. It's a can-be activated skill. Improves your ship's characteristics while the number of allies within your ship's main battery firing range doesn't exceed the number of visible enemy ships. Your ship is not counted as an allied ship. So let's say you're within your main battery firing range, let's say you're closer to being in range of 3 enemy ships versus 3 of your teammates, this skill will be activated, and you get plus 8% on your ship speed, and you get a negative 10% on your maximum main battery shell dispersion. Probably if the main battery isn't how it was, like say it was on the front of your ship, then I'd be in rear of your ship, I'd say, yeah, I'll take it. Or if it had a buff to the secondaries, I'd say take it. But because it doesn't, in my mind, it just kind of wins out taking the A Defense ASW Expert. You know, besides getting your heal consumable off cooldown faster, it's also nicer to have a ship that's more stronger in the AA, because smart CV players will focus you if you're pushing a flank and they see you pushing on the map. So all that said and done, it's going to bring this video to a close. Let me know your thoughts on what kind of build options you like to take on your Varese. This is just my opinions and thoughts and what I've liked running with the ship so far. So, if you liked today's video, give a thumbs up. If you didn't, give a thumbs down. Subscribe if you want to see more. If you subscribe, thanks so much. I appreciate it. Thank you to my Patreon supporters. Until next time, take care.